Welcome to Psych with Sigmund, where we delve into the fascinating world of psychology to understand what makes us tick. I'm your host, Sigmund, and today we're going to explore a fundamental concept that affects us all: observer bias. Observer bias refers to the systematic error introduced into our perceptions or judgments due to our own subjective experiences, expectations, or biases. It's like wearing colored glasses. Everything we see is tinted by our own unique perspective. This phenomenon has been studied extensively in psychology, and understanding it can help us become more nuanced thinkers, better communicators, and more compassionate individuals. One of the key psychological theories that explains observer bias is cognitive bias theory. Cognitive biases are systematic errors in thinking and decision-making that result from the way our brains process information. In the case of observer bias, our brains tend to filter out information that contradicts our existing beliefs or expectations, while giving more weight to information that confirms them. The concept of observer bias has its roots in the work of psychologists like Edward Thorndike, who first described the halo effect, a type of observer bias where our overall impression of someone influences our judgments about their specific traits. Other researchers, such as Albert Bandura and Daniel Kahneman, have also made significant contributions to our understanding of observer bias. Research has shown that observer bias can affect us in many areas of life, from social interactions to decision-making. For example, a study by psychologists Joseph Ledoux and Elizabeth Phelps found that people who are anxious or fearful tend to perceive neutral stimuli as threatening, while those who are more relaxed tend to see the same stimuli as harmless. This demonstrates how our emotional state can influence our perceptions and judgments. Another classic study by psychologist Solomon Asch showed how social pressure can also lead to observer bias. In his famous experiment, participants were asked to identify the length of a line, but they were surrounded by Confederates who gave incorrect answers. Many participants conformed to the group's opinion, even when it went against their own judgment. This highlights how our social environment can shape our perceptions and influence our decisions. In addition to these classic studies, recent research has also shed light on the neural mechanisms underlying observer bias. For example, functional magnetic resonance imaging (fMRI) studies have shown that activity in areas like the amygdala and prefrontal cortex is associated with biased processing of emotional information. So, how can understanding observer bias help you in your everyday life? By recognizing the role of observer bias, you can become a more empathetic and effective communicator. For instance, when engaging in conflicts or misunderstandings, try to set aside your own assumptions and listen more objectively to others. This can be particularly helpful in situations where different perspectives are leading to gridlock. Additionally, being aware of observer bias can help you make more informed decisions, whether it's evaluating evidence in a scientific study or assessing the credibility of news sources. In therapeutic settings, addressing observer bias can be an important part of treatments like cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT. By helping clients recognize and challenge their own biases, therapists can empower them to develop more balanced and constructive thought patterns. In therapy, Sarah reveals that she has a tendency to assume the worst about people's intentions, often leading her to misinterpret their behavior. Through CBT, Sarah learns to recognize and challenge these negative assumptions, replacing them with more balanced and realistic thoughts. For example, when Sarah's friend cancels plans at the last minute, she might initially think, "My friend doesn't care about me and is just flaking out." However, after recognizing her observer bias, she challenges this thought by considering alternative explanations. Maybe my friend had a family emergency or was feeling overwhelmed with work. By acknowledging the possibility of other perspectives, Sarah can develop a more nuanced understanding of the situation and respond in a more constructive way. In conclusion, observer bias is a fundamental concept in psychology that affects us all, often in subtle but profound ways. By understanding how our own thoughts and experiences shape our perceptions, we can become more nuanced thinkers, better communicators, and more compassionate individuals. As you go about your day, remember that your perceptions are not always reality, and that's what makes the human mind so fascinating. As we explore the complexities of observer bias, it's essential to acknowledge the limitations of our current understanding. While research has made significant progress in recent years, there is still much to be discovered about the underlying mechanisms and consequences of this phenomenon. Nevertheless, by recognizing the role of observer bias in shaping our perceptions, we can take the first step towards developing a more nuanced and empathetic understanding of ourselves and others. Remember to like, share, and subscribe. And until next time, may your ego find balance between pleasure and reality.